Okay, a new effort from the White House to improve the public perception of Obamacare, with coverage under the new law kicking in for many Americans this week. The administration is now soliciting success stories from people who say it has helped them. This latest PR campaign coming even as there's still plenty of controversy and confusion over Obamacare, particularly for millions of Americans who saw their plans canceled. Chris Wallace, the anchor of Fox News Sunday here. Chris, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, Arthel.
Okay, so will the campaign work, Chris? I mean, what will ultimately cut through the din of discussions about Obamacare?
Well, I mean, over the course of time, it's going to be a question of individual circumstance. If you're happy with what the new system works out to be for you in terms of Obamacare, then you're probably going to feel pretty good and will think that the president did a pretty good job. If you're unhappy, then you're not going to like Obamacare, and you're not going to like the people, particularly this being an off-year election in the House and Senate, who voted for it. I will say it's probably smart politics on the part of the White House. I mean, they have openly on whitehouse.gov solicited good stories. And even the biggest naysayers about Obamacare, Arthel, admit that there are going to be a lot of people who are winners under this new system. If you're uninsured, you're going to be better off. If you couldn't get health care because of a pre-existing condition or you had to pay a lot more, you're going to be better off. Now, you've got to figure that the opponents are also going to try and get horror stories about people who lost their coverage despite the president's promise to the contrary, and the companies aren't going to extend a new policy to them. You know, there'll be a lot of horror stories as well. But in the end, it's just going to be the accumulation of either people who are happy with what the new system is or people who are unhappy with what the new system is.
And for sure, and you know, you mentioned Father Time, that he's going to have the final say. Chris, how long do you think it'll take before we get an accurate assessment of how this thing's going?
Well, you know, the sign-up goes until the end of March, and that'll give us our first sense. You know, the White House had been hoping for and saying that they needed about 7 million people to sign up to make this thing work financially for the insurance companies. You know, if we see at this point we're about 1 million to 1.5 million people behind because of all the rollout problems, so you'll have to see what happens as we get closer to the end of March. And then, you know, I would think by this summer, also by early fall, the insurance companies are going to look at their risk pools and decide whether or not they have to raise insurance. If that happens, then in the fall, people are going to start saying, well, for 2015, you may have to be paying a lot more in a premium. All of that's going to, people will know. And I think people have a pretty good sense whether Obamacare is working or not working well before the November election.
Okay. And now, Chris, you know that Tuesday evening, Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, well, she temporarily blocked the implementation of the Obamacare mandate. That's for certain religious groups to provide health insurance for employees that include birth control coverage. The administration has until tomorrow morning to respond. But what's the word around Washington on how that might go?
Well, I very much doubt that you're going to get a decision one way or the other. This, you would think, is almost certainly going to end up being further adjudicated either in the lower courts or by the Supreme Court itself. And what we're talking about here is not churches, you know, clear religious institutions. We're not talking about for-profit corporations. That case is already going to the Supreme Court, will be heard in March. We're talking about religious affiliated organizations, like in this particular case, the Little Sisters of the Poor. They have a bunch of homes for elderly people, and they say, you know, even though they can sign a certification where they're not responsible for providing birth control, but they have to certify that it's okay for the insurance company to do it, they say that violates their religious principles. And this is going to be a big battle, and it's certainly something we'll be talking about on Fox News Sunday.
And we'll be watching you on Fox News Sunday. Chris Wallace, thanks so much.
Arthel, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, the new year is certainly bringing new challenges, as Chris pointed out, for Obamacare. A controversial provision on the law, of course, now blocked. We're going to talk about that and some of the other legal hurdles that the health care law faces.
Also,